Hi, partners. In a previous report, I had it titled, A Man Who Made a Difference. Remember, he was a Delaware delegate, and he stayed home because he thought his vote wasn't needed and he wasn't feeling too good anyway. When they found him, they said, "You're needed, Mr. Romney." And boy, he immediately made a trip to Philadelphia and cast the vote for the Declaration of Independence to make it unanimous. He did make a difference. Well, I want to talk about a guy now that maybe you've never heard. Did you ever hear of the name Henry Knox? Don't feel bad if you didn't, but he was one of the most important founders of our nation that ever lived. But it's amazing how his name has just faded into history. He wasn't a dashing figure. He wasn't tall like George Washington, and he wasn't classic looking like Thomas Jefferson, nor was he a fast-talking attorney like John Adams. In fact, I don't want to be nasty about it, but he was rather plump. Plump! Yeah, and rotund, we said. That's why I've got the title of this one as our roly-poly patriot. I remember a song that they used to sing back in Oklahoma. Roly-poly, daddy's little fatty. I bet he's going to grow up and be a man someday. No, I'm not a good singer, but anyway, that's it. This story talks about this roly-poly man who really was a great patriot, and he did so much in winning the Revolutionary War. By the time he was a teenager, he was a street brawler. Maybe that's because they teased him so much about his being the size that he was. But anyway, he was the best at the best thing he could do, and that's fight. As the revolution approached, he knew that there was another kind of fight. Not out in the streets as with gloves or something, but this was about a war. And he formed a group called the Boston Grenadiers. He collected enough money in his 20s to buy a bookstore. Can you imagine this street fighter having a bookstore, but all of his books were about wars? And pretty soon, this out-of-shape street fighter became the walking encyclopedia of all the great wars from Julius Caesar onward. Now, he was so excited about his country, America, that he heard the big man himself was coming to Boston to look over the situation. When I say the big man, I'm talking about General George Washington. And he couldn't wait to meet him, so I've got to meet this guy. Because here's what had happened. He had formed a group of street fighters like himself, but they called themselves, as I said, the Boston Grenadiers. And when George Washington met him, he saw fire in this young man. Although he's 24 years old, he said, "Man, this guy's really got something, a passion for America. I can see that." And what had happened, he thought, I'll just give him a test, because he wanted him to do something, assignment that no one else would accept. About a year before this, the revolution was going now, and they captured a fort in Washington, northern New York, and it was called Fort Ticonderoga. And the British and the Americans abandoned this fort after the battle was over. This was the first American victory, in fact, that was going on in the Revolution. They left something behind that was very important, 60 huge cannons. If this was happening today, Washington would say, take one of our big cargo ships and pick up those cannons and bring them down here to Boston to defend. But now we're going back to 1700s. Fort Ticonderoga was 200 miles away from Boston, and it was dead winter. It was full of snow. George Washington gave him the task of getting those cannons down to Boston. He knew in his heart, he'll do something. So here's what happened. Henry Knox went up there and surveyed the area, and he thought, this is dumb. I can't get these cannons down there. He thought, wait a minute. If I can't roll them, I'll slide them. Slide them? That's right. So this guy's idea, brilliant, he had all of his men build sleds. And they built them and tied these cannons on there, and they literally drug them down to Boston. This is unbelievable, but that was it. He was so good at this that Washington used him at all different places all over. In fact, Knox helped Washington set up the attack on Trenton by crossing the Delaware in the dead of winter. And when the Battle of Yorktown took place, that was the last one in the Revolutionary War, you know who was leading the troops? That's right, Henry Knox. It's funny how history has forgotten this man, a common man, a rotund bookseller, and street fighter. When George Washington became president, he used Henry Knox as the War Department, head of it. We call it the Defense Department today. Yes, so many people in our country have done so much. All of our founding fathers, Dennis loves looking up these special things in history that they don't even teach in school anymore. But you think about it, there's so many wonderful, great stories, and I'm thankful I'm going to be bringing them to you in the coming weeks. I thought you might like to hear this truly most important man, one of the most important men in the founding of this nation. I want to say his name again, Henry Knox. I hope you'll never forget it. Roly-poly, daddy's little fatty. I bet he's going to grow up and be a man someday. Hey, thank you. Go back now and read the rest of my report. I love you guys so much.